This lesson we're going to talk about dotted quarter notes. All right, at the beginning you'll see we have a few different definitions, and some of them are very similar, kind of two different ways to say the same thing. So let's go over those real quickly. So a dotted note of any kind, when you add a dot after a note, it increases a note's duration by half. So you can have dotted half notes, dotted quarter notes, dotted whole notes. You can have dotted quarter rests, dotted half rests. Okay, so any kind of dotted note or rest, the dot increases the note's value by half. All right, another way to say that, some people call it the dot rule. A dot adds half the value of the note to the note. So it's kind of a way to say it almost like a rhyme. A dot adds half the value of the note to the note. To be more specific, a dot adds half the value to anything it follows. This includes a rest or even another dot. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. Okay, so you can remember it this way, or you can remember that it just adds half the duration. A dotted half note is a note with a duration of 3 beats. So right here, you see a dotted half note, it gets 3 beats. A dotted quarter note is a note with a duration of 1.5 beats. Okay, so you can pause if you need to. I want you to draw 5 dotted half notes. If you can do them as quickly as me, that's fine, or you can pause. And then 5 dotted quarter notes, but make them look nice. Make sure the dot is after the note, okay, follows the note. All right, okay. Now, I just repeat this again. This dot rule is very important on this worksheet. A dot adds half the value of the note to the note or rest. Now, we're going to do this sample with just numbers, okay? We're not even talking about music at this point. We're just talking about the basic dot rule. It adds half the value to anything it follows. So if you have something that's worth 10, just the number 10, and you add a dot to it, then this dot would be worth half of 10. So what's half of 10? 5. So you add those together, 10 plus 5 is 15. Okay, and we're going to do this a few times to kind of get the hang of it, and then we'll talk about it with the notes again. All right, so here, this is 50. Half of 50, this dot then would be worth 25. 50 plus 25 is 75. That's a lot of beats, 75 beats, okay? But we're just practicing this just to get the hang of it. All right, 200. Let's say we had a note that was worth 200. The dot then would be worth half of 200, which is 100. So this would get a total of 300 beats. Now that's kind of just to the point of being silly, okay? But just to kind of show you the idea. Now let's get back to reality here. A note that's worth 2 beats. What is half of 2? Half of 2 is 1. So 2 plus 1 would get 3 beats. So if there was a note with 2 beats that had a dot, it would get 3 beats, okay? Now, what if we have a note that's worth 1 beat and there's a dot after it? Well, 1, then you have half of 1, which is a half, so 1 plus a half is 1.5. Okay, so these are more realistic, like what we see in music more often, but this is just because it's a basic math rule, super easy. Whatever it's worth, you add a half the value, okay? All right, now let's try with some real notes and rests. So you have an example here. If you have a whole note, the whole note is worth 4 beats, okay? The dot is worth 2 beats for a total of 6 beats, so it gets 6 beats, okay? So let's do this one. A half note is 2 beats. Plus the dot is 1 beat, for a total of 2 plus 1 is 3. So it's worth 3 beats. Okay, here you've got a quarter note. The note is worth 1. The dot is worth a half. 1 plus a half is 1.5. So a dotted quarter note gets 1.5 beats. Now, I told you that up here, but it's more important that you understand why than that you just memorize it. Okay, so you need to understand how dots affect notes. Okay, the reason is if you understand the rule, then you can figure out any time you have a dot. So here we have a dotted whole note, looks like a hole in the ground, so it's a dotted whole note, so it's worth 4. The dot's going to be worth half of 4, which is 2, it's going to be 6 beats. Here's a half note, looks like a hat. 2 plus half of 2 is 1, total of 3 beats. Here you have a quarter rest, it's worth 1. The dot is going to be worth a half, total of 1.5 beats, okay? So see how instead of having to memorize 6 different values, you're able to just know the rule and you can figure it out, okay? Now, this is where I know if you really understand how a dot works, okay? This is kind of a puzzle. So it says a dot also adds half the value to a dot if it's a double dotted note. So there is such a thing as a double dotted note. You probably won't see it in your music for a long time, but if you understand how it works, then it makes all this seem really, really easy. Okay, so a dot adds half the value to a dot if it is double dotted note. So here we're going to walk through that. What would the duration of a double dotted whole note be? So we'll come back to this, leave that blank. Here's where we're going to work it out. So a whole note is equal to how many beats? 4 beats. The dot is worth half of 4 because it comes right after the whole note. So it's worth half of the whole note. What's half of 4? 2. Now be careful here. This dot is worth half of that dot because it follows that dot. So half of 2 is 1, right? So super easy, you're going to add 4 plus 2 plus 1, and you get a total of 7 beats. So again, the whole note is 4, the first dot gets 2, the next dot gets 1, so the total is worth 7. So then you're going to put 7 beats. Okay? All right, now you're going to write in the counts and foot tabs based on these dotted notes. Okay? So here we're going to do a big 1. We're going to do a little 2 because beat 2 is inside that half note. Then we're going to do a big 3 and a little 4. Then we're going to do a big 1 because this dotted half note starts on beat 1. We're in a new measure, and it has it's total of 3 beats, right? 3 beats, so it has beat 2 and 3 inside that note. So big 1, little 2, little 3, total of 3 beats. And then the next beat is going to be 4, okay? All right, then here, this is where you got to be real careful. A dotted quarter note gets 1.5 beats. So it's going to be beat 1, and beat 2 happens where that dot is. Now, this is on the up, and we'll go back and do the foot in just a minute, and you'll see what I mean. But this is on the second half of beat 2. So we can't call it 2 because it's not on beat 2. It's on the second half of beat 2. It's on the upbeat. So I'm going to put a plus. That can be an and if you say and, or it can be a T for tay, okay? So, but whatever you call the upbeat, I'm going to put a plus sign, or it can be a T, okay? All right, and then this is beat 3, and this is beat 4. All right, now let's go back and do our down up. So for each beat, you should have a down and an up. You have the first half of the beat and the second half of the beat. Okay, so here you can see in a half note, you're going to have down, up, 2 beats. In a quarter note, down, up, and then in the next quarter note, down, up. So this half note's going to be just like this one, down, up, down, up. And this half note's going to be exactly the same, down, up, 2 beats, and each beat has a down and a up. Now this one is going to get 3 downs and ups each. Down, up, beat 2 is down, up, and beat 3 is down, up. So you're going to have 6 arrows total. Beat 4 is going to be its own down and up. Okay, now here's where you need to be careful. This one gets 1.5. So the first beat, beat 1 gets a down and an up, right? Just like all these other individual beats got. They got a down and an up, okay, like right here. That quarter note got a down and an up, so this one's going to get a down and an up. But we still have the dot. The dot gets another half of a beat, right? A beat and a half. It's worth 1.5 beats, so it gets down, up, and it gets down. And then this note is going to happen on the up, the second half. It gets half a beat on the upbeat. And then here you're going to have a down, up, and here you're going to have a down, up. The link to the next lesson in this video series can be found in the description below.